coming up to the top of the hour, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today, which is on contact center metrics, a topic that is very dear to everyone's hearts. And I'd like to take you through our agenda for today, and delighted to introduce you two seasoned campaigners. First, I'd like to introduce to you Richard Snow from Ventana. Welcome to you, Richard.
Hi, John T, and hi, everyone.
So for people who aren't familiar with Ventana, I can't imagine there are many of them, would you want to give us a short pen profile of what Ventana does as an organization?
Well, Ventana Research is, as we describe ourselves, we're a niche research analyst firm. So we're kind of in the space of the Gartners and the Forresters, but we are quite a lot smaller. And we're very focused, in fact, on performance management. So analytics, metrics, business intelligence is very much one of our focuses. And I focused on the contact center, having had a lot of prehistory of, in fact, working with John T and building contact centers. So we're into doing benchmark research, and that's what I'm going to share today.
Wonderful. And then we're going to be joined by Devon, who's joining us on the news desk, who's going to be looking at all of your tips and questions coming in from the chat room. And then we're going to jump across to Indianapolis in the United States, where we've got Mike Murphy from Interactive Intelligence. Welcome, Mike. Very early in the morning. I don't know if you want to put your phone up to show the time with you there.
Yes, good morning, everybody. So here we are. That's the current time in Indianapolis, honestly.
And Mike, you're going to be talking us through how to harvest usable data from contact center metrics.
I am, yes. I think it's kind of a challenge, really, to get good data that we can use. And from that perspective, my topic, if you like, just highlights the merits, if you like, of being able to kind of like coordinate your data, so it's in a way that can be easily and more effectively, I suppose, used in analytics. So that's certainly part of my content, but not the only part, John T.
Wonderful. Well, if you want to get hold of a copy of the slides, you can do that from the chat room, and the chat room is a great place to leave tips and questions. We'll have a replay available later on today, which will be available at callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. So if you go into the chat room, it's this address here, callcenterhelper.com/chat. Just put your first name, last name, and email. It does come up in a separate window, but perhaps if you put the webinar window on one side, the chat room on the other, you can see both at the same time. The added advantage being logged into the chat room is that we've got a very active discussion going on in the chat room. You can also click on this link here, download webinar slides, where you can get access to the slides from both Richard and from Mike. So what I want to do is I'd like to start off with a poll. We're looking at metrics. How many key metrics do you report on every month? So this is the key, the really important of the metrics. Is it 0 or 1? Is it 2 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, or is it 15 plus? So it'll be interesting to see what the results here. Richard, do you think there's going to be a sort of Goldilocks number we're going to get here? Not too many, not too few?
From my experience, I would imagine we're going to be in the 10 to 14 range.
Okay, well let's have a look at the results, and we'll share those up on the screen. So here we are. So we've got 4% are on 0 to 1, 28% 2 to 4, 51% in the 5 to 9 range, 6% into the 10 to 14, 11% rather worrying, having to report on 15 plus key metrics. That's quite a lot of detail there, Richard.
That's, I mean, if you're in 15 plus, as you said, it's a lot of effort. Be very interesting. I think we're going to see later on in the webinar what sort of metrics people are reporting on. So I'd be very interested to see what they are. what that number's made up of.
Okay, well, we're going to jump now to a question in the chat room, and we're going to just ask the question. If you can just type into the chat room, what is the most important metric in your contact center? So is it something like first contact resolution? Is it net promoter? Is it sales volume? Whatever it is, if you'd like to put that into the chat room. Lucy says it's service level. Philip says utilization. Joe says net promoter score. Catherine says abandoned calls and service level. Service level says Janaka. Abandoned says Christopher. The grade of service says Lee. Justine says it's the first point of contact resolution. Jenny is the customer answer rate. We're seeing service level from Saleha and Sarah. Net promoter score from Hilda. Grade of service from Craig. Customer satisfaction from D2. Kate says average speed of answer. We haven't seen customer effort coming through in here. Louise has got a group margin per booking, which is a sales one. Richard has got sales per hour. Lucy is also, I think, sales aimed, which is conversion rates. Sean, most important measure is forecast variance. So I guess, Sean, you're in the resource planning field.
Yeah.
Pete, it's contacts per hour, so I don't know if that's outbound dialing. Rebecca, service level. We've got Mark, who's got the net easy score, which I think is the first customer effort one we've got in there. Marion looks at abandon rate. Christopher, how long advisors are on natural toilet breaks? Exclamation mark.
And how you measure that? Especially the natural bit.
Perhaps there's a timer on the door there.
The door is here.
Lucy is measuring the customer journey is most important. The quality of call, service level from Florence, and Savio, first time resolution for effortless customer experience. So we've got quite a range there, Mike. Service level seems to be if there was one consistent one that's coming through, but it's quite encouraging to see things like abandon rates, customer experience metrics starting to come in there.
Yes, indeed, I agree, and I also like the ones where we are kind of associating the contacts with values, like commercial values. So whether it's sales or whether it's conversions or those type of metrics, I like to see that bringing together of like two different worlds into a nice holistic metric. That's pretty cool.
Indeed. So I think there's quite a lot of food for thought there. So I think that's probably the right time to hand across to Richard. And then, Richard, if you'd like to take us through your thoughts on best practice contact center metrics. So I'll just pass the baton across to you here. So if you'd like to line that up on your screen.
Thanks, John T. I'm really quite happy with the metrics people are using, because it's going to it's really going to follow on. It's really, sorry, I'm having technical problems here, but
we're seeing it okay, fine here. You just need to click it.
Fine,
I think.
Good. Which actually fits very well on my first slide and my first comment. As you've seen, I've been a little cheeky, having been asked by Mike and John G to talk about contact center metrics. I decided to throw in that I'm going to talk about customer and contact center metrics. And I've done that for a very good reason. I'm sure, like everybody else, your companies will be focused on things like customer satisfaction, a big drive to improve customer satisfaction. And behind customer satisfaction is becoming an increasing focus on customer experience. And of course, contact centers, we sometimes tend to forget, are all about engaging with customers. You know, your contact centers are the face of your company to a lot of your customers. And they might be using different channels, but a lot of them are still coming into the contact center. So there's a lot of engagement going on with customers. And so what we saw from the metrics being used is that there's more focus about understanding how well you're doing from a customer's perspective rather than a pure operational perspective. And that's really shown from a piece of research I did into next generation customer engagement. And really the first point that we saw was that as this was a confidential benchmark, quite probably an honest opinion from a lot of companies saying that only a third of companies believing they provide excellent customer experiences, suggesting that there's a lot to be done. 59% believe they're good, but in this highly competitive world that I'm sure you're in, being good is probably not good enough these days. And so we had over 3/4 of companies saying it's important to improve the way they engage with customers. And of course, part of doing that is having the right metrics, so you can see what the current situation is, set some new targets, and then see how you're performing towards those targets. And it was further shown up that companies are looking to add that new box to that level of customer experience, moving it up from being excellent to being outstanding. And what we saw from that same research was, in terms of engaging with customers, then the focus has become improving the customer experience, improving customer service. And what you could see, which was really quite surprising from the history and my association with contact centers, much less focus on reducing operational cost. So our research verifying that companies are more focused on the customer, they will still be concerned about cost, but actually improving that customer experience, improving customer service has become the mantra for today. So we asked customers, we asked people that took the research what technologies they. Are you taking it back, John T? Hello?
We're just going to go and do a quick poll. Hi, hopefully you can hear me. We're just going to do a quick poll that follows up on your point there, Richard. If customer experience is the top priority for contact centers, just want to ask the question, what is the best way to measure customer experience? So is it Net Promoter Score? Is it customer effort? Is it customer satisfaction? Is it first contact resolution? Or is it a combination of measures? So if you'd just like to vote on that. Sorry to jump in there, Richard.
Sorry, my fault. I was counting my slides wrong.
Haha. So just be interesting to see which of the single metrics is going to be the best way to measure customer effort. So let's just share here. We've got quite a convincing vote here. I'll just share the results with everyone. Here, sample size is 212, and we've got 8% saying Net Promoter Score, 6% customer effort, 8% customer satisfaction, 9% first contact resolution, and 70% saying it's actually a combination of measures. So, Richard, looks like there's no overall topic coming out. There's no single measure really that our audience thinks that can measure customer satisfaction.
Well, I think I'll probably jump to my last slide then, shall I, John T? But I mean, it's clear as the markets develop that there is no one metric that's going to say everything. You can see a lot of people fascinated by NPS and CSAT and FCR, but these have to be viewed in the context of other metrics. And so let's see how we develop that theme as we move forward. So one of the things we asked in the research was the technologies that were going to help improve customer engagement with those 77% of companies looking to improve. And again, really quite a bit surprising in that mobile came top, analytics second, very close second, collaboration and social media And perhaps the more interesting thing in the sense of the technologies we don't see. So for those that were in the chat room before we came on, hearing Mike say telephony is kind of was the be-all and end-all, and now it's dropped behind. What we're seeing is these tech companies thinking these technologies are the things that are going to improve customer engagement. So being able to provide customer service through mobile, using more advanced analytics to understand customers, to derive more accurate customer metrics. We've talked again briefly about multi-channel, multi-business units involved, and so collaboration. So getting, for me, the important thing is getting more consistency across the organisation of providing those experiences by collaboration. So, and really, the real bottom line was when we looked at onto the key topic here of analytics from our next generation customer analytics benchmark, customer had jumped up there to by far the most important analytics, with just under 3/4 of companies saying being able to understand their customers, having an analysis of their customers, picking up on what people said, being able to understand journeys, being able to understand sales, being able to understand things that are customer related, rather than what it was 2 or 3 years ago, where similar research would have had contact center operations at the top. So again, message that contact center operations understand the cost of engaging with customers. I don't think it's ever going to go away. But the focus and the priority has become understanding the customers and deriving customer-related metrics. However, what we've seen is one of the problems when we asked about what actual tools companies use to do that analysis and metrics, then the most common tool is still spreadsheets. Now, I want to emphasize, I'm not saying spreadsheets are bad, but we all know, and those people who use them, they have their limitations. And when we're talking about, deriving some of what I would say are these more advanced, more complex metrics about customers, then really what we're seeing is, nearly 2/3 of companies finding that using spreadsheets is making it difficult to produce accurate and timely analytics and metrics. And I think both of those are important. They need to be accurate because people are going to make decisions based on this analysis and metrics. And they need to be timely, as many people often forget that engaging with a customer, unless it's through email or things like this, happens in real time. So having those metrics in real time is really important to companies. And what I want to point out to is that we see an increasing adoption of what we call specialist systems. So systems that are really been designed, built by vendors to actually be able to produce more timely, more accurate analysis and metrics associated with the customer side of things. Now, all my colleagues and everybody, as I said, for those that were in the beginning, when we did the Ventana focus very much is on performance management, analytics, metrics. And all of us find whenever we do research, the most important thing is data. I sometimes just say it's all about data, data, and data. Now, everybody talks about we have a lot of customer data. And yes, indeed, we have a lot of customer data. But possibly the more important thing is we have a huge variety of customer data. And in our research, we asked which data sources companies were using to produce that analysis and metrics. We identified 21 generic types of data. And here you can see that the top 10. But really the key thing is that as of now, the average number being used is 6. That means majority of companies are missing out on a great deal of insights that they could obtain by using an extended range of the data they have available.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, I can't say that without uttering the words which I find create fear in many people, which is big data. You know, and many of you will associate with big data with one of our competitors when they're in their 4 Vs. And yes, volume, veracity, variety is all important, but we take a more, if you like, pragmatic approach and go for, think about 3 Ws. If you go away from on this session and just think about what data have you got about customers. You know, look at that slide on the data sources and see that you will have that data, and you'll probably start adding up till you get up to that 21%. And so understanding what data you've got is the first step. Then the next step is what information do you want to get from that? As we already saw, you're all deriving different sets of metrics, but it's that combination. So you want to look at what combination of metrics, what type of analysis you want to do. And then you have a little step behind there which says, okay, well, what technology is there around that can produce that? But you first need to understand is what data have you got, and then what information you want to get from that. But our last and really most important W is what action you're going to take. You know, there's an old saying which says you can only improve what you measure. But I kind of turn it around and say there's no point just measuring it if you don't do anything about it. So, you know, people who say, I have a net promoter score of this, well, fantastic. What are you doing to improve? What are you using that metric to derive? Customer effort, I know, is one of Jonty's favorites. If you're measuring customer effort, then if it's hard for customers to engage with you, what are you doing to make it easier? So when you're thinking about new metrics, new analysis, then certainly one of our recommendations would be to think about those 3 Ws, and that will make sure that you take advantage of all the data you've got, and you will get the information you need, and hopefully you will then persuade people to take action. And behind all of that is the fact that you need to look at different types of analytics, and some vendors are bringing these together, but it's that variety of data. You have call recordings. They're different to CRM records. You have social media posts. They're different to emails. You have lots of recorded calls. There's lots of insights in there which need speech. You get lots of chats in terms of text messages or chat session scripts, and so text analytics. So you need to not just look at one type of analytic systems to get those insights, to get those metrics you want. You have to begin to look at a whole variety. And one of the things that we've seen that is helping drive adoption is more and more people going to the cloud, more vendors in the cloud, more people going to the cloud, and that's increasing adoption for just about 1/3 of companies. And the other side of mobile is look at your employees and look at how many of them are working away from their desk, and therefore how you need to and how you can provide that analysis, those metrics on their mobile phones. And you know, we've found 25% of companies finding that helping drive adoption. But I want to come off the technology bit and go back to that core question, the metrics. And here is, I think, a reflection of what we got in the poll, John T, which is we asked two questions, and I deliberately asked two questions because I was expecting alignment between the answers. So what metrics does your organization use? And we saw a variety of those. Nobody mentioned those horrible acronym, AHT, but I'm sure that each of you have got AHT in there somewhere. But, you know, the AHT, first contact resolution, and agent quality scores, bringing in that employee side of the operational side, they're the metrics that we found the majority of companies were using. But I asked another question, which is, what are you trying to improve? Going to that third W, if you like, what are you going to use that information for? What are you're trying to improve? And you know, the top three metrics that companies are trying to improve are customer satisfaction, customer retention, and new customers. And I sat for a long time looking at those two, saying they're not aligned, are they? I can't go away from it. They're not aligned. So, you know, how does using average handling time as the main metric help you improve customer satisfaction? And this was an illustration for me, and hopefully for yourselves, that there are two sides of engaging with customers. There are two sides of running this contact center. There is the operational side. You know, the operational side does hit cost. Adherence to SLA can hit cost. And so that side is always going to stay there. But as we've seen from some of the previous slides, and hoped you kept that slide in your head saying that the customer analysis has overtaken the operational analysis, there's this increasing focus on customers, and therefore the increasing use of customer-related metrics. And the key moving forward is going to be aligning those two, and we'll come back to that. So if you wanted to be pure on metrics, we broke metrics into three buckets: operational, financial, and customer. And again, we've seen that slight disalignment in that the average number of metrics that companies are using from an operational point of view were 5. And this was things like call outcomes, so somebody mentioned that. SLAs, somebody mentioned that. Quality scores, somebody mentioned that. So these are the type of operational metrics that companies are using. And I said, on average, there's 5. And then in the financial side, the average drops down to 3. And there again, very cost-oriented, and adherence to budgets, adherence to service costs. But creeping in there is a customer profitability focus. So the first two are probably, if you're like most organizations, you know, you have those CFOs sitting on top of you saying, yeah, keep the costs down. But just an average of 3 there. And then in the customer bucket, we had customer sat as the top, and some people mentioned that. But one of the things I think that you know, if I wanted to take away one message from this slide, was that last metric in the customer lifetime value. If you're thinking about, you know, being in a competitive market and balancing operations, i.e. the cost to serve, and the revenues you're earning from customers, then, you know, lifetime value is the metric which shows you that. And so I'd say think seriously about that. And as I've just realised, that adds up to 11. So and a bucket. So we were pretty much in line. So to do that, you will need to look at using different analytics. There's good reasons to and good ways of building a business case. We've seen that companies get an average of 6 benefits, so it's highly beneficial. and you can download and you can and see. But top of the pile is being able to improve customer experience. So out of that, I leave you with 4 best practices, which comes back right back. The first one, as I said, I could jump to my last slide, having seen the results of Jonty's survey. That the answer is a mix of efficiency and metrics, effectiveness metrics, or what we call outcome metrics. So I don't think AHT will ever go away because it does drive costs. But customer sat, net promoter, customer effort, lifetime value, being able to see that your operations of your center is delivering on those key business things that your company's looking for. That will require the adoption of a specialist analytics tools, so you can make the most of all that data. If you think the 3 W's and get a clear picture of how much data you've actually got, then to get these things you will need specialist tools to do that. And think of that slide where we had an operational focus and a customer focus. You need to align these metrics to your business objectives. What are you actually trying to achieve? If you're trying to drive up NPS, if you're trying to drive up customer effort, if you're trying to drive up net promoter score, then you need to put in place and use the metrics that are going to help you deliver on those business objectives. And my final best practice is share the information, not just within the contact center. Customers do engage with almost every part of the organization. So share this information. Use the same information to decide and make decisions and take actions. So that would be my 4 best practices. And as I say, the major one would be you do need to look at a combination of mix of operational and customer-related metrics. So thank you.
Wonderful, Richard. Thank you very much for that. I've certainly taken a number of takeaways from there. Customer experience is going to be the top priority as we move forward. There's no point in measuring it if you don't do anything about it. Quite interesting, the average contact center uses 11 metrics, 5 operational, 3 financial, and 3 customer. And if there is one metric that you should be using in your contact center, which I could guess you're probably not doing today, is customer lifetime value. Because customer lifetime value, I've done calculations for that in the past, and if you ever want to put a business case in front of your senior executives, customer lifetime value is one of the most useful ways to do that, because it's quite easy to quantify customer loss in terms of its lifetime value, and that can be quite fascinating. And if you haven't got one already, you're probably going to need some specialist analytics tools. So, Richard, thank you very much indeed for that. We're going to jump across to the chat room now, which has been absolutely humming along, which is at callcenterhelper.com/chat. Devon, what have you got from us in the chat room?
Yeah, we've had a very busy chat room today, so thank you, everybody. We're going to start with an opinion today from Kate, who says, the more metrics you have in place, the less you're able to drive change from them as you spend too much time to review the data. Mike, would you agree with this?
It can be a trap for sure, Devon, and you've got to be careful. But I think there's a new energy around the metrics and analytics, so I think we're going to find that the tools will start to emerge to make it a little bit easier, but just not quite so available just yet.
Great, thank you. We've got a tip in from Christopher, who says, thinking of customers as everyday people, thinking as we would in their shoes to ensure that the way we interact is more personal. Treat customers as people and not as a process. # first contact resolution. Richard, do you agree with this one?
Oh, I'm a person, I'm a customer. Absolutely. Right behind you there, Christopher. I mean, I think that's absolutely fundamental, and one of the things that I find a lot of people do is they forget that they are customers, and you have bad experience with other people, and stop and think, are you doing that to your customers? So I'm right with you. Treat people as people.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Sarah says, measure the behaviour you want to get. As focus changes, so should your metrics. Don't stick with historic measures because it's what you've always done. Christopher again says, customer and employer engagement should work hand in hand to ensure results and the overall metrics are achieved. We have
That's quite an interesting one, employee engagement, because that's actually quite a hard one to actually measure beyond the average staff satisfaction survey.
We have an opinion now from Mark that says, hashtag tip or more of a conversation point. What about one metric which encompasses all key metrics to acquire an overall view of how your contact center performs? Hashtag controversial. Mike, what do you think of this one?
Well, I think given what we've learned so far from the audience participation and from Richard, I think we're a little bit away from that golden metric. But I think now that it's become such a accessible, the data is becoming more accessible, and the tools will emerge. Who knows? We may well get something which is like consolidating, but then to kind of make that a de facto. With at least 20 variables, that's going to be fun.
Thank you for that. Harry says, data should be as simple as possible. Measure what you're looking to achieve because that's what you'll get. Natasha Jade says, using data intelligently for predictive analytics is amazing. We build predictive models using machine learning. What information do you want to get from that? The thing with machine learning is the machine can also ask a question. We have an opinion from Craig that says spreadsheets let you do reporting, not analytics. And then Christopher again says, don't be afraid to simplify data. It doesn't have to contain graphs on graphs and charts upon charts. It's more important how we present the data and, of course, what we then do with it. Richard, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, well, I seem to be getting Christopher. A lot of interesting points there, Christopher. Some of which I could probably spend the next 24 webinars debating. I personally, what you say is true. One of the things I always have this problem with, and in fact I argue with my colleagues about this. There's the difference between data and information. Data is really that core end systems stuff. It's that CRM records. It's those call recordings. It's those scripts. That's really what I think of as data. What you want to get out of the data. What information do you want to get? And the thing is, when you think about the information and picking up this point, is how you present it. There's different ways to present the same data, but you do have to think very carefully about it. I had somebody from a user saying he got into a lot of trouble when he presented some analysis, some data to his executive, and they all went crazy. And he said, "Why are you going crazy? That's good news." And they're going, "No, the chart's dropping." And he said, "You haven't looked at the axis. That's good news." So they'd all been used to looking at it the other way around. So I think the way the information is presented is key. There are different ways. I don't think you have. I think I agree with you. You don't have to get that fancy. People do like the data to be clear and focused on, what they're trying to achieve. So from that perspective, I agree.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Devon. We're going to jump across to Mike Murphy now, who's going to take us through how harvesting usable data can help improve contact center metrics. So, Mike, if you'd like to put your slides up on the screen. And Mike's dialing in today from Indianapolis in the United States, which is the home of the Interactive Intelligence Annual Conference. Mike.
Hi, John T. Thank you very much, and thank you, Richard, and thank you, audience. Really, a great webinar so far. So yes, I'm currently sitting in Indianapolis. We've had our global customer event this week, but in this section, I want to touch on the technology tools that will help us measure the right contact center metrics. And you will find some of these will be familiar. but I do want to talk about and just sort of like do some snippet reveals, if you like, of some of the metrics that may be emerging pretty soon. I believe there's a freedom now, if you like, from the more modern technologies to be able to access a better information to analyze. And in that context, I think we should be in a much better place, I think, in the next couple of years with regards to really effective and useful context center metrics. Okay, so before we talk about the specific metrics themselves, I just want to, bearing in mind I'm the technology guy on the call, I just want to talk a little bit about how we gather the source data to actually create the most valuable contact center matrix. And, as people who work in the contact center, we know that the platforms that we use tend to generate tons and tons of data, but, we need all the data for all of the telephone call activity, email, web chat, SMS, and social activity events. And I mean, all of the events for all of these different media types, we kind of need to be able to get to that information. And I think what we've observed, if you like, in some of the feedback so far is that when you have disparate systems providing that information, it just makes it harder to get that information. So although it sounds ambitious, but my view is if it's happening in the contact center, even if it's just a small number of people doing social, it's in the contact center, so it needs to be measured, it needs to be gathered, the data needs to be consolidated, and we just figure out how we're going to analyze it best. And as well as the actual contacts themselves and the channel types themselves, we also need all the activity events around the individual agent and the self-service that's taking place, where we don't actually have to reach through to an agent resource, and of course any automation that we have going on in the contact center. So again, I'm really looking to get my arms around everything that's kind of going on in the center, and I want to understand, and I want to be able to work with, if you like, that information. And then finally, any customer satisfaction, it might be a net promoter score, it might be customer feedback measures, whatever you have, again, I want that data. So kind of like building on where Richard was going in his slide, just in that description that I've played out to you right this minute, I've already mentioned 11 individual different data sources, the calls, the chats, the agents, the social, etc. And as Richard mentioned, the danger of so many sources is that when the data is unstructured, coming from a variety of different platforms, it becomes really challenging to work with. So, beg your pardon, sorry everybody. Here we go. So, regular attendees to the call center helper webinars where Interactive is involved will kind of recognize perhaps this graphic where we talk about the all-in-one functions, if you like, of the contact center from a single platform. And when you kind of see the functions listed around the clock face, if you like, of the cloud that you can see there, what you can see is that all of the 11 sort of functions that I mentioned, all of the 11 types of information that I want, if you like, are actually available and coming from that single application. And the beauty, really, I suppose, is that given we've been developing this application over 20 years, it's very comprehensive, but the real power is the fact that all the functionality is consolidated into a single database. Okay, and this really is quite unique. And then I think from the point of view of being able to access what we call like useful and structured data, here I believe we have a great head start really for the organizations that want to try and set out in their strategy to use Richard's recommendation, your recommended sort of next step strategies. By having a single database with structured data around all of the 11 variables that we talked about just now, that I think is quite compelling and a great head start for the organizations on the more modern applications. And certainly when you're on the more old-fashioned type of applications, it's just so much harder. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that in the context of getting the data, and hopefully that's helpful. We kind of move on now really to the actual metrics themselves, and we did a little bit of research ourselves in Interactive. We kind of polled a healthy number of consumer and professionals kind of around the world, so it's not just like US or UK data, it's a global sort of measure of data. And here's what customers or consumers, if you like, reported back when asked the question, which of the following are most likely to be frustrating for you when you contact a business or a service provider? So most frustrating was not being able to understand the agent and the agent's attitude. You're kind of shivery and scary if you like that particular piece of feedback. And then wait times and transfers, slightly less frustrating, but only slightly. It's still very frustrating for the customers. And clearly we have some major quality and capacity issues then. On this particular assessment alone, straight away to me that means I've got to get busy on helping my agent become more clear in how they articulate themselves, help them improve, if you like, how they listen to and respond to customers, and actually try and take away this notion of being condescending or demanding. And then by capacity, what I'm looking at here really are things like initial long wait times. It's just an obvious example really where we're trying to maybe just be a little bit too cost control focused, and the suffer then becomes the customer experience around wait times or transfers. It's another example of where that particular issue sort of pops in. Here's a different question though, again asked of the same consumer group. Which do you value most in customer service interaction? So thinking about yourself as the individual when you're doing your interactions with your suppliers, what's the most important thing you want to achieve? And what was nice about this particular survey, we actually played it over 2013 and 2014 so that we could kind of compare results. And on this particular chart, the only difference between the 2 years was the first two, where the knowledgeable agent in 2013 was the most valued, where in 2014 actually it was the timely response that got that sort of top position, shall we say. But you can see there first call resolution is in there, professionalism, efficiency, and interestingly effective follow-up. So from that perspective, I just want to sort of like put that up there, if you like, as to where we get our priority perhaps from, and then just let's dig a little bit deeper down into a couple of these. So starting with the easy one, time to answer with a human, absolutely an operational metric as Richard would define it. As we move into the omni-channel world, this measure can no longer be a call time to answer measure only. We have to be putting the time to answer to all media types. We just have to. It's silly not to. And let me just say, if it's an issue for you to do that, if you're finding difficulty in doing that, and maybe you're trying to deploy chat and you're just not able to get response times going, then please just stop offering chat as a channel until you kind of get yourself organized and in control, if you like, with your calls, because otherwise you're just going to like magnify your problem and kind of you're trying to run before you can walk type of thing. You really got to get the core base time to answer addressed before you start adding in more complexity with other channels. So just keep that in mind. And think about your workforce management tools, really. Are they delivering you forecasts and capacity planning for all your media channels? I know from a lot of the customers out there that they don't, typically the more older types of workforce management tools. So get a good focus on what are they actually assessing, because if you're not actually, forecasting, tracking, scheduling, if you like, around the complete picture, or you haven't included email in there or chat in there, then don't be surprised if you're blindsided by the unexpected, because that's the whole point, if you like, of the multi-channel world. And really, if you like, around the capacity planning side of things, if you staff to your demand, there won't be a wait time issue. And what I'm saying there really is, I first worked with First Direct back in 1994, and a great company, very innovative at the time, kind of like defining, if you will, what telephone banking was to be, back in the 80s and the 90s. And in working with them, it was very, very clear that a fundamental part of their brand was the fact that customers would never be waiting to get through to an agent. Very, very simple, and they invested in that, and they made that part of the sort of the First Direct experience. And here we are, like 20 odd plus years later, Nunwood doing some research, focusing on the top 100 brands here in the UK who are, if you like, deliberately doing consumer excellence or customer experience excellence, I beg your pardon. And here they rank, in 2014, First Direct is #1. So I think if you want to do it, you can do it. I think it's a case where, and I think in that context, we've kind of got to get these messages to senior executives to understand, if you're going to kind of like penny pinch and scrimp and scrape, then the consequences are going to be just bad customer experiences. Then obviously, remembering that sort of consumer study area that showed capacity as well as quality being a priority metric. So again, not just calls, obviously the most high volume and common channel, but we must be doing quality and recording of all media types. Okay, and good assessment targets here would be the quality of the interaction, scoring it from 1 to whatever it may be, the accuracy of the information gathered and provided by the agent and entered, if you will, adherence to how the contact handling process is going, helping the agent identify where they might need coaching, personal development, or maybe just additional training. Don't forget as well that these days we've got a lot of compliance in the air, so are we actually following the compliance statements thoroughly, and trying to sort of extract, if you will, effective patterns that we can use to sort of analyze and improve, if you like, the overall picture. But then what about the customer metrics? And what was nice about Richard's slides really is how he kind of brought that to our attention, really, I think, in a much more focused way to kind of make us think outside of the sort of like the usual contact center metrics. And how we gather and harvest those metrics in a sort of a reliable and structured way. And firstly, of course, we would all recognize like a post-call satisfaction survey, kind of inviting the customer to take part in a brief sort of like IVR-based dialogue, just to sort of capture some 1, 2, 3, 4 measures, if you will. But again, we are in this multi-channel world, so that's only really good for calls, and it'll give a good sample there. But what about the post-email? What about the post-chat? What about the post-SMS? Excuse me. So in that context, then, what we're finding is customers are adopting what we call process automation tools, and on that, really, on the end of an event, then they will start to kick off a series of sort of follow-ups to say, like, thanks for your email. Hopefully, we responded to it correctly. Can you just give us a score on that, your particular experience with us? And the nice thing then, if you like, about the automation tool is the fact that you can kind of build assessments and sort of monitor how your customers are providing the information. So as well as feeding out the survey to the customer, you're actually gathering the information back as well in automation. So it doesn't become a sort of a heavy burden, if you like, on your operations. The software can actually take care of the work here. And then don't forget, like, survey fatigue, okay? Because every time I interact with somebody, I don't want to be immediately asked every time, can you please take part in the survey? Can you please take part in the survey? I'm going to get very, very bored. So again, as part of a sort of a smart interaction process automation strategy, you will be looking to build in there the sort of accommodation of being timely in how you offer the survey, when you offer the survey. Maybe it's 1 in every 7, 1 in every 10 interactions. Maybe it's associated with some investment that the customer may have had or change in their circumstances the customer may have had. So don't just slam every interaction with a survey, but think about and be sort of make it part of your brand experience how you want to invite the customer to take part in the survey for all-around better results. And then, of course, a real powerful analytics that's come into the picture more recently is the speech analytics, or in the interactive case, the notion of real-time speech analytics, a really strong and powerful customer metric, and built-in triggers in there to act on real-time call scores and kind of allow us to very visually and sort of quickly get a good temperature of how the customer is feeling. And to be able to kind of bring, if you like, the visibility of the customer sort of like current thinking, feeling into an actual, into like a typical contact center metric. Here we have a supervisor screen. We can kind of see some little plus and minus scores at the bottom right in the screen. So if we look at those more closely, straight away I can see right this moment, how the customer score is looking for that particular conversation. Okay, because the software is listening specifically to the customer. They're kind of like trying to sort of like listen for keywords and phrases that we have defined, and by the sort of like the allocation of those words and phrases, we're able to sort of put that temperature score on that particular call. But again, if you could imagine then extracting that customer score and just popping it into the customer record, then if there was a particularly negative score, then the next time I'm going to route that particular customer arriving into the contact center to an agent, and I happen to know that the last time this customer engaged with me, they had a very poor experience, I can use that information then to prioritize that customer through to a more skilled agent so they can get a much better experience the second time. Okay, so just leveraging the benefit there internally. Okay, so kind of moving away from the metrics that we know, really, I just want to kind of touch on where I am today. I'm broadcasting live from downtown Indianapolis. This is the location of our global customer event, and like I said earlier, there's about 3,000 delegates here from all around the world. And from the point of view of the feedback, if you like, from the the delegates here at the moment so far, there's a pretty good buzz of excitement and lots and lots of breakouts and work groups and specific topics being investigated. So kind of like a busy, like slammed in full agenda as you would expect from an event like this. But at this particular event, what we're actually doing is introducing some new functionality from Interactive, which I'm not going to dwell on really. I just want to put a little frame around what it is that what we're doing, because it is very relevant, if you like, to the analytics discussion. We have this sort of like new offering called Customer Engaged, just been announced basically, and along with the contact center, it has exciting new tools that will help us to work faster, easier, and more effectively with our colleagues, what we call collaborate, and then also just to communicate with each other, what we call communications. So together, if you like, customer engagement, communications, and collaboration, we're branding, if you like, and defining as C3. And then what you can see, if you will, is that our vision is that the modern organization relies upon 4 essential groupings of applications. So obviously a HR sort of application, ERP application for fulfillment of your customer's order or loan or whatever it may be, CRM naturally, because we have to understand the customer and build that intimacy over time. But then we would like to see as our sort of like success will be that C3 that will become the communications hub of that particular wheel, which would be our vision. The nice thing really is as we start to sort of promote and sort of bring this tool to market, straight away you can see that right in there, up and proud, is like data analytics straight out of the box, if you will. So, given that it's a multi-channel application with outbound, workforce optimization, etc., it's nice to see now that the definition, if you like, of data analytics and obviously what we had with speech analytics is starting to be, if you like, expected functionality. A little bit of an insight into other things that are coming through this notion of behavioral analytics. So being able to kind of match your customer with your agent based on different things. So maybe their individual personality profiles, mutual interests, where they're actually located perhaps could be the reason how we're going to match the customer to the agent. And again, we're talking about each interaction type really sort of trying to be intimate and more sort of professional, I would say, with the actual customer and respectful, if you like, of the customer. And the final one really is just about where we're kind of going with this kind of capability. From the point of view of this is a brand new piece of functionality from Interactive. It's kind of built on our 20 years experience. But you can see going forward, the things that we'll be delivering are advanced analytics, analytics-assisted routing, customer choice routing. So very much around the customer metrics, if you like, that which was driving for, and in a way, if you like, the more operational maybe would take a less still a crucial role, but maybe just a less visible, less broadcast perhaps metric. Whereas I think the customer metrics will become much more the visible and the broadcast and the shared metric of the future. So John, with that, reporting live from downtown Indianapolis, I'm going to hand back to you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Mike. Some fascinating insight there. 2 takeaways, I think, are really very strong from that. Align your metrics about what your customers value most. So things like a timely response, a knowledgeable agent, and first call resolution. And also, I think quite important, if customer experience is the name of the game, then using an automated survey of your customers could be very useful, where you can score them on the overall experience, but don't overdo it. We don't want to get survey fatigue coming in. I think we've got time for 3 tips in the chat room from Devon, if you'd like to share those with us.
Okay, so Kate says, if you treat your agents well and treat them like grown-ups, they will deliver better customer service. We ask the team how they feel in one-to-one and also what they want to change and why. We cannot always make the changes, but they feel valued and engaged with us and the brand. Richard, what do you think of this one?
I would say I think there's a lot of truth about that, but I think one also has to take into account, and I've seen examples of this, is that we as individuals, we can be in a good and bad mood, and that influences, if you're a call center agent, that influences the way you are on the phone. So I don't think it's just about treating people as grown-ups. I think we should do that, obviously, but one has to consider, how individual personalities can really impact the customer experience.
Excellent, thank you. Craig says, AHT is flawed. In an extreme case, you can just inform your agents to drop calls constantly, beat your AHT targets all the time, but completely kill your customer experience.
I've seen that in a few centres.
Only a few.
And finally today, Mark says, a business needs to focus on two key areas, customer and company. Align your metrics to these two elements to drive customer satisfaction, advocacy, efficiencies while retaining one eye on costs. Back to you, John T.
Okay, thank you very much. We're reaching the top of the hour. So just if you could, in the chat room, in one or two words, what did you like best about today's webinar? One or two words in the chat room, please. Just a reminder that you can watch a recording of this, callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. I know a lot of you would like to rewind on some of the topics we've covered, a lot of detail there. You can also download a transcript of the chat log. So callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. You can watch the replay, and just like to say thank you to our two speakers. Thank you, Richard, for joining us today.
My pleasure, John T.
And Mike, thanks for joining in from Indianapolis.
Yes, thanks, John T. Thanks, everybody.
And just a reminder, if you could complete the survey as you leave the webinar, it is semi-automated, but I do read every response that people put in there, so it is not. Hopefully, survey fatigue does not come into this one. So thanks, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you online next week. Thanks, then. Bye-bye.